Boredom hits everybody, right? Maybe you've got like 30 minutes before work, maybe you're too tired to commit to some gigantic RPG with 17 skill trees and a codex the size of an encyclopedia, or maybe you just want something that immediately hooks your brain. Today on this video, we're talking about 15 best games to play when you're bored. These are games you can jump into fast, have a hell of a lot of fun with almost instantly, and then either keep going for hours or bounce out whenever you want. Some are cozy, some are chaotic, some are downright addictive in a way that should probably be medically studied. Let's get started. Okay, so first up, we have Slay the Spire. This game has ruined countless evenings for people. You sit down for one run, and next thing you know, it's 2 a.m., and you're trying to build some absurd poison combo while questioning all your life choices. Slay the Spire is one of the gold standard for roguelike deck builders. You pick a character, climb a tower full of enemies and events, collect cards and relics, and slowly create these insanely powerful builds that either completely break the game or explode in your face spectacularly. And honestly, both outcomes are fun. The reason it's so good when you're bored is because runs move fast and decisions always matter. You're constantly tweaking your deck, deciding whether to take risks, figuring out synergies, and adapting to whatever nonsense the game throws at you. It keeps your brain fully engaged the whole time. What's really impressive is how easy it is to understand initially. You don't need to study spreadsheets or watch 10 YouTube guides before having fun. You can just jump in and start experimenting. Then later, once you get deeper into it, you realize how ridiculously layered everything actually is. Every character also feels completely different. One run you're stacking poison damage. The next you're building infinite energy combos. The next you're accidentally creating the worst deck mankind has ever witnessed. We've all been there. And because runs usually last around 30 to 45 minutes, it's perfect for those moments where you want something substantial without committing your entire week to it. Coming in next, it's Hades 2. Look, the first Hades was already ridiculously addictive, and somehow Hades 2 manages to feel even smoother. The combat is faster, the abilities are flashier, and the whole thing has this just one more run energy that's honestly dangerous. You play as Melinoe, the princess of the underworld, battling through mythological enemies using weapons, magic, and godlike upgrades that stack into absurdly satisfying combinations. And because it's a roguelike, every run feels a little different. That's the key right there. Boredom games need momentum. They need to pull you in immediately. Hades 2 absolutely does that. Within seconds, you're dashing around, launching attacks, freezing enemies, setting everything on fire, and generally causing mythological chaos. The controls feel insanely responsive too. Every dodge and hit lands with impact. It's one of those games where movement alone feels satisfying, and even when you fail, you still progress. You unlock dialogue, upgrades, relationships, new mechanics. So losing never feels like wasted time. That's important for a game you're probably booting up casually. Also, the writing is fantastic. Everybody in this game talks like the coolest person in the room. Somehow even the gods insulting you feels stylish. Runs are usually around 25 to 35 minutes depending on how badly things go, which makes it perfect for quick sessions that accidentally become very long sessions. And next up, we have Untitled Goose Game. There are very few games that understand comedy as well as Untitled Goose Game. You play as a horrible goose terrorizing a peaceful little village, and the entire game is basically built around being the biggest nuisance imaginable. You steal people's stuff, lock them out of places, ruin carefully organized gardens, blast air horns at inappropriate moments, and generally make life miserable for everybody around you. And it is unbelievably funny. A lot of that comes down to how committed the game is to the bit. The goose isn't cute, the goose is a menace. Every objective feels like some tiny act of cartoon villainy, and the reactions from the villagers make everything even better. Gameplay-wise, it's this mix of stealth, puzzles, and slapstick chaos. You're figuring out how to manipulate people into certain situations so you can complete increasingly ridiculous tasks. Sometimes the solution is smart, sometimes it's just honking loudly until somebody panics. Honestly, relatable strategy. The whole thing only takes 2 or 3 hours to finish too, so it's super easy to knock out over a lazy weekend afternoon. And because the controls are simple, anybody can pick it up immediately. Also, the dynamic piano soundtrack deserves a shout out because it turns every stupid goose crime into high art. Now, next up, we have A Short Hike. This game feels like a warm blanket in video game form. A Short Hike is about a little bird named Claire exploring a mountain park while trying to reach the summit to get phone reception. That's basically the entire plot, and honestly, it doesn't need anything more complicated than that. The magic is in the atmosphere. You wander around meeting charming characters, gliding through the air, fishing, climbing cliffs, collecting treasures, and just existing in this incredibly cozy world that somehow makes everything feel okay for a little while. It's relaxing without becoming boring, which is harder to pull off than people think. The movement especially feels fantastic. As you collect golden feathers, you can climb higher and glide farther, and eventually traveling around the island becomes genuinely joyful. You stop caring about objectives and just start vibing. And because the whole thing only takes around 2 hours to finish, it's perfect when you want something meaningful without committing to a gigantic game. You can finish it in a single evening and walk away happier than when you started. That sounds cheesy, but seriously, this game has good energy. Sometimes you need that. Also, the dialogue is really funny in this super natural, understated way. Everybody talks like actual people instead of quest dispensers, which makes the world feel weirdly authentic despite being full of cartoon animals. Constance. Imagine a world where your main weapon is a paintbrush and your creativity is the only thing keeping you from a total mental breakdown. You play as an artist named Constance who is exploring a decaying inner world that represents her own mind and struggles. This is a hand-drawn Metroidvania where you gain new abilities by learning different painting techniques as you explore. For example, you can turn into a literal stroke of paint to dash through solid walls or fly across gaps. The combat is very fast, and you have to switch between different colors to exploit the weaknesses of the enemies. Now the animations are some of the smoothest I have seen in an indie game lately, and it makes the platforming feel great. You will find hidden secrets tucked away in every corner of the map, which means you really have to pay attention to the background art. The thing is that the game deals with some heavy themes like burnout and the pressure of being a creator. On top of that, you have a stamina bar that you have to manage while using your special brush moves. But seriously, the way the world transforms around you as you progress is honestly one of the coolest things about the game. You are basically trying to bring color back to a world that has gone gray and lifeless because of the protagonist's internal conflict. The level design is very clever, and it forces you to think outside the box to reach the next area. Plus, you can customize your playstyle with different charms and brush upgrades that you find along the way. Like when you get the ability to create platforms out of thin air, it completely changes how you approach the older zones. It feels like a mix of Hollow Knight and some of the classic art-focused platformers from back in the day. So then you should be prepared for some tough platforming challenges that will test your patience and your precision. At the end of the day, this is a beautiful and meaningful journey that every fan of the genre needs to experience. Darwin's Paradox. Konami just dropped a game that basically turns a trip to the ocean into a full-on stealth mission. You control a very confused but very clever octopus named Darwin, who gets snatched from his reef by a shady company. The whole goal is to break out of a massive industrial lab while accidentally uncovering a world-ending conspiracy. And, moving around is the best part because you can stick to any surface with your suction cups. This means you are constantly climbing on ceilings and wrapping your tentacles around pipes to avoid security bots. There's also this camouflage mechanic that lets you blend into the background like a literal ghost. You will spend a lot of time hiding in plain sight or squeezing through tiny vents to bypass locked doors. Also though, you can spit ink to blind cameras or create a smoke screen when things get too sweaty. The physics feel a bit floppy in a funny way, which adds to the slapstick vibe of the whole adventure. So yeah, you have to manage your momentum while swinging through complex machinery and rotating cogs. Now, the animations make Darwin feel super expressive even though he never says a single word. The game gives off major Little Nightmares energy, but swaps the horror for a bright cartoon aesthetic. On top of that, the level design keeps you guessing with puzzles that require 360-degree thinking. Here's the kicker, because you even get to drive some of the human vehicles using your 8 arms. Meaning you are not just a helpless animal, but a tactical genius in a squishy body. The difficulty spikes during the boss chases can be a real pain if your timing is off by a millisecond. But seriously, seeing an octopus wear a human disguise to sneak past guards is worth the price alone. Keep your eyes peeled for those cardboard box references that pay homage to some classic stealth legends. Coming in next, we have Dispatch.
You want to get people hurt? Get people killed?
A real hero puts their ass on the line.
Here's the thing. It's a superhero mystery game, but it's not about punching villains or saving the city from some giant laser. It's about the aftermath. You're not playing a superhero. You're playing someone who works at a dispatch center for superheroes. You're the person on the radio, the one coordinating the response, the one making the calls that actually save lives. It's from some of the writers behind the Telltale games, so the dialogue system is deep, the choices matter, and the characters feel like real people with real problems. You're investigating a mystery, Something went wrong on a mission, a hero is missing, and you have to piece together what happened by talking to people, examining evidence, and making tough calls. The writing is also sharp. It's funny when it needs to be, tense when it matters, and surprisingly emotional in places. There's no punching, no superpowers, just good old-fashioned detective work with a superhero coat of paint, which is such a fresh take, right? Everyone does the what if superheroes were dark and gritty thing, but nobody does what if superheroes were just another job and you're the 911 operator. It's the kind of game that respects your brain. You're not just clicking through dialogue trees, you're actively piecing together a puzzle, and the game trusts you to figure it out. If you liked The Wolf Among Us or Disco Elysium's dialogue-first approach, Dispatch will be right up your alley. Hollow Knight Silksong. After years of waiting, we finally get to see how much faster the movement feels in this long-awaited sequel. You play as Hornet, who is way more agile than the original protagonist, and that completely changes the level design. The platforming is built around her verticality and her ability to grab onto ledges to pull herself up. For instance, you have a move that launches you high into the air to reach hidden platforms. And honestly, the addition of a grappling hook called the Claw Line makes navigating the world of Farloom feel incredibly fluid. You will spend a lot of time ziplining across massive gaps and dodging through thorny hazards. What's wild is how the combat and the platforming blend together because you can use your needle to bounce off enemies. The truth is that the game feels much faster since you are constantly dashing and gliding with the Drifter's Cloak. Plus, the environments are much more vertical than the ruins of Hallownest, which rewards players who love to explore. And also, the controls are some of the tightest in the business and make every difficult jump feel fair. This precision is vital for the late game areas, which means you can really push the limits of your reflexes as you hunt down new tools and charms. Every new biome introduces a different way to move, like wind currents that carry you across bottomless pits. So then you should be prepared for some of the most intense and rewarding platforming challenges ever made. All that to say, the wait was worth it just to see Hornet fly through these haunted halls with such grace. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. So picture a world where pixel art meets one of the most brutal combat you have ever seen on a handheld. This side-scrolling adventure puts you in the shoes of a young ninja named Kenji who has to defend his village from demons. Ryu Hayabusa is away on a mission in America, so it is up to you to step up and handle the invasion. The combat is very fast, and you can switch between Kenji and a deadly assassin named Kumori at any time. Meaning you can use Kenji for up-close sword fighting, and then swap to Kumori to snipe enemies with kunai from a distance. The thing is that their souls are literally fused together, which gives you access to some insane power-ups. You can summon giant spider weapons and use ninja magic to wipe out entire screens of monsters. Also, though, the platforming is very technical because you have to use a move to bounce off projectiles. What's wild is how the game rewards you for being aggressive by giving you a hypercharged state that one-shots most mobs. Look, you will be exploring branching paths that lead to secret dimensions full of even tougher challenges. The truth is that the boss fights are some of the most creative encounters in the entire series. On top of that, the animations are incredibly smooth and make every slash feel like it has real weight. And believe it or not, the story is actually pretty engaging as you try to stop the Demon Lord from crossing over. You will need to master the parry timing if you want to get a high rank on the harder difficulty levels. In other words, this is a love letter to the classic NES titles, but with the depth of a modern fighter. Yooka-Replaylee. Imagine taking a colorful N64 collectathon and giving it a total overhaul so it actually plays like a modern masterpiece. This game is a complete reimagining of the duo's first outing, and it fixes pretty much every issue fans had with the original version. You control a chameleon named Yuka and a bat named Laylee as they try to stop a greedy corporate bee from stealing all the world's books. The biggest change is that the levels are fully open from the start, so you do not have to wait to unlock the cool parts of the map. And yeah, the camera system is actually good now, which makes navigating the massive 3D environments way less of a headache. You spend your time hunting for golden pages by completing races, and solving environmental puzzles for the local NPCs. Also, you can collect a new currency to buy tonics that change how the game looks, or how the physics work in real time. The platforming feels much tighter, because the moveset has been polished to make jumping and gliding feel more responsive than ever. For instance, the reptile roll is a great way to gain speed and knock enemies out of your path while you explore the jungle. The truth is that the world is packed with so many secrets that you will probably spend hours just trying to find every single feather and coin. Here is the kicker, because the entire soundtrack was re-recorded by a full orchestra to give the music a much more epic feel. Still, the humor is just as goofy as it always was, and you will run into plenty of weird characters who need your help. You are basically going on a massive treasure hunt that feels like a love letter to the golden age of 3D platformers. This is the definitive way to experience this adventure, and it proves that the mascot platformer genre is still alive and kicking. Sword of the Sea. So this one is from Giant Squid, same team that gave us Abzu and the Pathless. So you already know you're in for something that looks like a moving painting. But here's what's wild. It's not just a walking simulator with pretty visuals. You're on this hoverboard sword thing, carving through these massive desert landscapes like you're in a skate park designed by nature. The game calls it a hover sword, and it moves like a snowboard and a surfboard all at once. It's one of those games where the movement itself is the point. You're not just going from point A to point B. You're flowing. You're pulling off tricks, catching air off these crumbling ruins, and the more you move, the more the world around you changes. Sand dunes literally transform into shimmering oceans as you ride through them. That's not just a visual trick, it's the whole gameplay loop. You're resurrecting an ancient sea just by surfing across the desert. The vibe is meditative, but also kind of exhilarating at the same time. Austin Wintory did the score again, so expect that same emotional swell you felt in Journey. And the best part? It hit PS Plus day one. So if you've got a subscription, you've got no excuse not to try this. It's the kind of game that reminds you why you fell in love with indie titles in the first place. No bloat, no map icons, just pure, intentional artistry wrapped around a movement system that feels incredible under your fingers. Reanimal. The creators of Little Nightmares are back with something that is somehow even more unsettling. You play as two siblings who are trying to rescue their friends from an island filled with twisted animal creatures. And the character designs are the stuff of actual nightmares and will definitely give you the creeps. The camera angles are used perfectly to make you feel small and vulnerable in this massive dark world. But then you get into the co-op mechanics and realize how much fun it is to be scared with a friend. And also, everything in the environment feels heavy and interactive, which adds to the tension. Say you are trying to hide under a floorboard while a giant distorted sheep sniffs around for you. Honestly, the puzzles require some actual coordination if you are playing with another person. Still, the game is just as effective if you decide to go through the horror alone. The thing is, the sound design is so crisp that every floor creak sounds like a death sentence, meaning you will be crouching through most of the game just to stay safe. Plus, the world tells a very dark story about grief and loss without saying a single word. And believe it or not, the transition between different environments is seamless and keeps the dread building. What is wild is how much detail they put into the textures of the gross monsters. All that to say, this is the best horror game we have seen in a long time. Keep the lights on if you do not want to see these things when you close your eyes. Neva. Everything about Neva feels like a moving painting because it comes from the same team that made Gris. You start off as Alba, who is bonded to this majestic wolf cub, and you both have to navigate a world that is literally rotting away. The combat is surprisingly tight and snappy, which is great since the platforming requires some pretty precise timing. Honestly, the way the wolf grows up throughout the game actually changes how you play and tackle different puzzles. Plus, the relationship between the two characters makes every boss fight feel personal rather than just a challenge to overcome. You spend a lot of time double jumping and dashing through these gorgeous environments that look peaceful until the shadow monsters show up. The truth is that the level design uses the wolf's evolution to keep the mechanics fresh, so you never feel like you're just doing the same loops. And yeah, the platforming gets pretty intense later on when the world starts falling apart under your feet. It's wild how they managed to make the movement feel so fluid while telling a story that doesn't need a single line of dialogue. You basically have to protect your companion while it learns to defend itself against the decay. What's wild is how the colors shift based on the emotional weight of the scene, which helps you stay locked into the vibe. Most of the time, you are just trying to find a safe path through the chaos, but the platforming challenges really test your reflexes. This means that you cannot just spam buttons because the timing on your air dashes is crucial for survival. Anyway, the ending is going to stay with you way after you put the controller down. You should definitely check this out if you want a game that looks as good as it plays. Firewatch.
Hello? Whoever this is?
It's Henry, right?
Yeah.
I'm Delilah.
Yeah, that's what the guy said on the phone.
Firewatch is a game that's kind of tempting to take for granted, because on the surface, you're just a guy in a tower looking for smoke. But the thing about Firewatch is that it's actually one of the most human stories I've ever played. You're Henry, this guy who basically retreats into the Wyoming wilderness because his real life has become too much to handle. Honestly, I think we've all had that urge to just disappear into the woods when things get heavy, right? So you're out there, completely isolated with nothing but a handheld radio and the voice of your supervisor, Delilah, on the other end. The writing is just incredible. I mean, the way their relationship develops over that radio feels more real than most face-to-face dialogue in AAA games. It starts off light, almost like a summer job vibe, but then this mystery starts to bleed into the edges of the map. You start finding things that shouldn't be there. You get this feeling that you're being watched, and because you're so isolated, that paranoia really starts to sink in. It gives off this vibe of a slow burn thriller where the biggest threat might just be your own head. The art style helps too. Everything is bathed in these deep oranges and reds that make the forest look beautiful but also kind of suffocating. You're hiking through these canyons and climbing over rocks, and it's just you and your thoughts. Which is the kicker, because the game isn't really about the mystery at all. It's about why Henry is there in the first place. It's a bold choice to make a game where the ending doesn't give you a massive explosion or a boss fight, but it pays off. I've always appreciated how they didn't compromise on the grounded nature of the story. It's one of those just one more day type of situations where you just need to know what happens next. By the time the credits roll, you're left with this specific kind of quiet reflection. It's a game that is probably going to stay with you because it forces you to look at the things you're running away from. Just pure atmosphere. Makes sense why people still talk about it. It's worth the walk. Everyone always says they want to be a baby again because you have no responsibilities, but this game shows that having psychic powers while wearing a diaper is actually high stakes. Goodnight Universe is a first-person adventure where you play as a 6-month-old named Isaac, and the catch is that you have the brain of a full adult. You are stuck in a high chair trying to navigate weird family dynamics while discovering you can move objects with your mind. It is developed by the same people who made Before Your Eyes, so you already know the emotional damage is going to be real. And just like Before Your Eyes, this game can also use the webcam to track your facial expressions and where you are looking to trigger your psychic powers. Imagine trying to stay stealthy from a corporate tech group that wants to kidnap you for your brain, while you are also trying not to get caught by your mom for making a mess with your blocks. Now, the visuals are super vibrant and look like a high-quality animated movie, but the story gets pretty deep as it explores themes of belonging and family. Honestly, the gameplay feels fresh because you are interacting with the world from such a low perspective and everything looks huge. You might think playing as an infant would be boring, but trying to save your family from a shadowy organization using your literal eyeballs is a huge flex. So yeah, that is why it is worth checking out.